Okay.
Okay, well, I am J.R. Yusuf. I'm the author of The Other F Word, Forgiveness, and I also started the hashtag BisexualMenSpeak on Twitter. And I am joined today by the amazing author, Nnanna Ikpo. He's the author of Fimí, sílè Forever, and that was nominated for a Lambda Literary Award in 2018 for gay fiction. So I just want to start this off by telling you how much I love the book and what it meant to me as a Nigerian American. It has been quite a rocky road for me growing up with my parents and being raised in Queens, New York, and not quite fitting in and realizing from a relatively early age that I was not heterosexual. So trying to reconcile my identity as a Nigerian American and bisexual was really, really difficult. And this book really helped me do a lot of that and helped me heal. And I loved your writing style so much, and I loved so much about this book. And I feel like it was written for me. It's one of those books that you come across and it's like, wow, like somebody wrote this for me. That's really cool, you know? So I just want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I just want to start this off by asking you, when did you realize that you were a writer?
That's a very tough one. I think it's for as long as I realized that I had a speech impediment, I stutter a bit. So I preferred to drop little notes for my dad and my mom around the house to say things that I would ordinarily not have the guts to say to them face to face.
I hear you. That reminds me when I was in college and I had a really difficult time speaking in lecture hall and stuff like that. And so a lot of times I wouldn't. And after class, I would send my professor like a long email about all of my thoughts about what everybody else had to say. And I remember one professor in particular, she got really, really upset with me. She was like, you have great ideas and you need to say them. And like, I won't give you participation credit because you are not saying them in class. So yeah, a lot of what you said definitely resonated with me. And I noticed with this book, you made it very clear that this was for an African audience. And I just wanted to know, what are some of the joys and what are some of the challenges of writing for an African audience?
Let me begin with the challenges. I started writing the book at a time when a lot of information wasn't accessible as regards what being non-heterosexual was or is in a Nigerian, let alone African context. My first day of writing, I think, was in 2013. I just come out of the university. And I was waiting law school, and I realized that so much of what I needed wasn't there, and even if it was there, it wasn't easily available. I tried to get in contact with as many openly queer Nigerians as I could, and of course at the time most of them were on asylum, right? The likes of BC Alimi and Davis Makiyala, who have been targets of violence in Nigeria. We're all living abroad in the UK and the US. So it's mostly through internet calls like calls like this, Google searches and stuff. I was able to get information, and also most of it was also let's say wishful thinking, because there was no way of knowing for sure, right? I've read some reviews, and there's the argument that people make that the characters in it are very upper middle class, right? If
Mm-hmm.
not very up there on the social economic scale.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't people who the world is used to experiencing as regards Nigerian LGBTI people. There are people who would usually appear in the news
Mm-hmm.
as being lynched or being victimized. These are very powerful people who have access to resources and to resources, both human and material. People who travel the world and still came back to Nigeria. There was very much wishful thinking. Um, the other the joys of writing was that there was no try to say there was no precedent at the time. There was no Nigerian precedent at the time for what I wanted to do. Right? There was we've had at the time there was Judibia's Walking with Shadows. It was available to me. I read one chapter. Um, and the kind of Nigerians I want to write about were the type that would ordinarily not be scared of being outed, or whose lives will not change if they are outed. And even if it changed, it wouldn't matter that much to the grand scheme of things. So really, what I would refer to now as the pink naira. So it gave me being having not having a president come gave me the liberty to curate this. If there were a powerful queer Nigerian, what would he be like? What industry would he operate in? What would it that he would have access to that would mean opening the right doors and accomplishing the right things for the movement? Yeah.
Wow. So it was a lot of like self-actualization or imagination, and even manifestation probably too. Like manifesting these characters that
Yeah.
maybe you haven't seen in the world, but you want to see them. And that's so powerful and so cool. Wow. My internet connection is unstable. Okay, it's back. um, I wonder, what was some of the most surprising things that you learned when writing this?
Um, I think the most surprising thing for me was that towards the end of my writing, um, I realized that there was indeed um, an underground community of very powerful queer Nigerian, right? Quite similar to what I've written about, um, who were joined. I don't know if you um, got to read about the Rainbow Talk, the Rainbow Talk group, the men who came together. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can hear
Yes.
you, but I wasn't able
Okay.
to read about them.
Okay.
Mhm.
The Rainbow Talk in the book is really a group of men who connect over the phone to talk about queer related issues in Nigeria,
Mhm.
and they are try to say a community of ex-lovers, or let's say a community
Yeah,
of lovers,
yeah,
right? Who are joined by either I say by a part of hookups among each other,
mhm.
right? A similar thing in Nigeria. I'm not. I don't know if I'm allowed to, mention their name. It's a group, but they're not joined by hookups, right? They're just joined by mutual friends. You need to know a person. Someone needs to verify you to come in,
Yeah.
right? And these are very gifted men, very influential men and women, and trans persons and persons who don't um, who don't
Non-binary.
fall neat.
Mhm.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, you just need to be admitted. You need to be verified. You need to know someone in there who trusts you and stuff.
I see.
And yeah, it was shocking for me to discover that although I had thought it wasn't there, and I imagined it was actually in existence and thriving long before I wrote.
Yeah. And that was something for me that was really wonderful and shocking, but also at the same time, it was like, yeah, of course there would be something like this. You know what I mean? When I read it. And prior to reading this book, so much of what I had imagined about what it was to be LGBT in Nigeria, it really revolved a lot of either shame or violence and things like that. And then growing up, like my parents just told me that LGBT people don't exist in Nigeria. Like I've heard that so many times from both of my parents, from aunts and uncles and people, other Nigerians and things like that. And so in a lot of ways, I thought that I was completely like alone and like there was no bisexual men, bisexual Nigerians, period, for a really long time growing up. So it was really nice having this fictional way in which, like, it is fiction, the Rainbow Talk, but in some ways there are groups that are similar to that in Nigerian life. Yeah, so that was really powerful. I wonder what made you choose to write it in first person point of view.
Um, it wasn't a conscious decision, right? I had kept a few diary entries prior to my deciding to continue as a novel, and so those diary entries were in the first person, and I just carried on.
Ah,
Yeah, and also I think it's easier. I mean, to say cast your consciousness into something that you're not very aware of, and easier for people to trust you when you're not really playing God, right? I've read a few novels that are from the bird's eye perspective. You see everything, you know everyone, what they're thinking, what's happening. You can give a full picture, right? But the human experience is really about not knowing. And although my writing in first person wasn't deliberate, I saw that I enjoyed it more than writing from the bird's eye view, because I wanted people to experience not knowing for sure.
mm-hmm.
You know, like not knowing what the future holds, not knowing what the next person thinks, not knowing if you would survive an accident or a relationship or a hookup, even just not knowing.
Yeah, yeah. And so I've read online that the inspiration for writing this, it came a lot to do, like it was a response to, the Same-Sex Prohibition Act. Was there any other things that inspired this?
Yeah. Besides the anger and um, with the passing of the law, there was the Style Plus track. I don't know if you've heard it, Olufumi.
Olufumi, from back in the day? From like the early 2000s?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
That's
It
all
was
we
a very, very, yeah. It was a very. I thought it was a very beautiful track,
Yeah.
and I would have it play repeatedly while I wrote,
Mm.
and um, um, the I think it inspired the title, right? There is a line in the song that says "Fimí, sílè, láíláí," right? Fimí, sílè, láíláí. I think Fimí, sílè is. I think there's a something. I think it's Mashe Fimí, sílè, láíláí. I'm not. My Yoruba isn't very good, but I think it's along the lines of "Don't ever leave me," right? And so I just took out the don'ts and changed the láíláí to
Uh,
yeah.
wow.
So like,
That's so
to
cool.
leave me forever. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was quite central to. There's a part where the two brothers were chasing their brides down the road
Yeah.
in a bike. Yes, I had that playing very loud when I was writing, because the song is really about the one who got away and trying to convince her to come back and begging her to stay and giving her reasons to stay, right? In spite of the obvious plethora of reasons to leave.
Yeah.
And you see that part, these were women who were about jumping into heterosexual marriage with men who had tendencies for same-sex love. I mean, it was a logical thing to leave, right? And I mean, someone would expect that the men should be happy that they were liberated, right, from such from getting to such unions. But the more I think about it, the older I get, I'm in Nigeria at the moment, and the more I stay here, I begin to realize that when men marry women, right, especially if they are older and more financially independent, that they cannot be pushed into it, it's often an expression of agency, right? Contrary to what people believe, like Nigerian men are forced to get married to women, social pressure, family pressure force them to get married to women. What if it's just an expression of agency, right? The men want to access a certain level of legitimation or freedom or stability, or they just don't want to grow old alone, right? Is there anything that says that the same-sex loving man cannot genuinely want to spend his life with a woman, right? Yeah, so it's just along those lines. Like, a queer man would want to have one in his life so bad that he would sit down and risk everything.
I remember that scene, and I'm good. I remember that scene where they were chasing them, and I wasn't sure if they were going to be crushed on that bike in between the two trucks. And it just kind of makes me think of your style of sequencing things and your pace and your timing with your writing. And I just wonder how you came up with your style in terms of pacing and things like that, because it's very, very unique.
When you say pacing, what do you mean?
So in a lot of the early parts of the book, you're taking us through a certain scene, and then you'll mention something and you'll kind of go into detail about that particular thing, and sometimes even take us a bit into the future and show us how that particular thing resolves, but then you'll come right back to that initial scene that you were writing about and continue on the story. Even with where you decided to let us know about Wale and Wole not knowing that they even existed until they were a certain age, like the sequencing of your scenes. How did you come up with that? How did you know when to roll certain things out and when to reveal certain things to us?
Okay. I know you're Nigerian American. Have you ever been in a conversation with do you have cousins back here?
No, not that I speak to, no.
Okay. There's a way, it's not a universally Nigerian thing, but there's a way we say, if I said, Yusuf, come make a gist you, right?
Yeah.
And they'll call you aside, start giving you the narrating how an event happened, right? And instead, that narration is often not it very logical, straightforward thing. It's a lot of back and forth and giving context. Oh, there, I saw this auntie. This auntie, can you remember? We met her last year at this event when she did this, right? And then they'll come back and continue. So it was really about talking across to my reader as though it was someone intimate who wouldn't mind going back and forth.
Back and forth.
It's not very it's not a very formal or usual thing to do. It can also get very confusing if it's overdone. I know not everyone would follow, but for those who do, for me it's a mark of connecting, of intimacy, of saying then I want to be free enough with you to do this, and I
Yeah.
want to trust. I want you to trust me. Trust that this will all make sense at the end. Just listen. Yeah.
Just let it like wash over you and try to like put yourself in this world too and into this culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. So the twins. What were some challenges
Okay.
of writing twins and these twins in particular?
Twins. I think the biggest challenge for me writing twins was that the expectation for them to be very different, even though they are physically identical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also they are the fact that one was really gay and the other one was bisexual. At the time of my writing, I was learning a lot of things, and mostly about the LGBTQI spectrum
Mm-hmm.
and binaries in the spectrum, what it means, what it means to be gay and bisexual, lesbian, all of that. And I don't know. Um, Sometimes I regret um, trying to impose those labels on them, right? Being gay and bisexual, because um, it's often not that tidy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who is measuring? Who is who gets to say what is substantial opposite sex attraction to ground um, an authentic bisexuality,
Mm-hmm.
or who is there to say what to measure what's substantial same-sex attraction to ground homosexuality, right? Who gets to define those parameters? And um, it was tricky having to write them both apart and constantly trying to prove prove to the reader, prove to myself that indeed one was more authentically in love with this girl than the other, right?
Uh,
Um, as though that was important, right? It's
yeah.
not important. I don't think now. Looking back, I don't think now that was a very important thing for me to do. I think that I mean I should have engaged more with the fluidity of sexuality, with the innocence that comes with affection, with um with the distance from binaries, right? Because when a person says something, when a person says I love you, or one person decides to go as far as marriage, he's not thinking what ratio. I mean, how authentic will I be? It's just the obligation is he has to be a man, right? He has to be he has to be a good protector, defender, provider,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how that plays out in his growings or in his heart is
Mm-hmm.
really no one's business, right? And then why should I? I mean, I didn't think that even as a creator of those characters, it was in my place to label them gay and bisexual.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't very different
Mm-hmm.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Perhaps to an extent, they were reflections of projections of myself
Yeah.
at the time as
Uh-huh.
well.
Like the stereotype of like when writers write their first novel, usually like there's a lot about themselves in it. But I think I want to give you more credit. I really want to give you a lot more credit there. I found these sort of binaries actually quite helpful, especially like reading it. it was nice to it was really cool to have one twin who was gay and one twin who was bisexual, and the bisexual twin knew he was bisexual, but he hadn't had sex with a woman yet. And that was so, but he had sex with men. And that was really cool because you don't really hear about that kind of bisexual, especially not in the United States. Like the portrayal of bisexual men is that, oh yeah, they've had sex with men and women and they're always having sex. They're having lots of sex with everybody. So I thought it was really, really powerful that, yeah, the bisexual one didn't have sex with a woman, but he knew he definitely desired women. And the gay twin knew he was gay and he was going to fulfill his obligation as a man and things. And I thought that you were really engaging that idea of what it meant to be a man in Nigerian society and at large. And how for some people it can feel like a straitjacket, and for some people it can feel like something inevitable, something to step into. Um, I don't know. I didn't really see it that way. I found it really helpful to illustrate differences between them. And outside of the fact that one of them was gay and one was bisexual, um, Wale was much better at Yoruba, and Wale wasn't that good at Yoruba. And there were other things. There were other like differences about them, and I don't know. Because in my mind, when I was reading it, they were very different. But it was so cool, like their connection and their bond, and even the way that they first were introduced to each other. I just remember when I got to that scene, I was just like, wow, this is so Nigerian. Oh my God. Like
The thing is that
so many times, so many times, like my parents have just like, they won't even explain anything to me. They'll just like put me in a room with something or someone and it's like, oh yeah, this is this or whatever. And I'm just like, what? Like this just blew my mind. You're introducing me to my twin brother for the first time. I didn't even know he existed. You're not even going to give me an explanation. Like what? And I have to just figure it out, you know?
yeah.
Yeah, I want to give you more credit.
Thank you very much. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, it's twins. The relationship between twins is also not something that you can. I mean, there is really no way of knowing for sure outside of that relationship. You see, there's been a couple of movies done here in Nollywood about the bond between twins as being a spiritual one, right? That's often, even when they are of opposite sex, one survival is only tied to another. There's some level of telepathy, the level of joint destinies and stuff. Where'd he go?
I'm sorry. I have a puppy right here. He's gone crazy. Yeah, no, I'm listening. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. So it's just it goes back to the spell of not knowing and experimenting. And if there was a twin, if I had a twin, what would the relationship be like? And I also tried to look at what violence was like, or what violence is like between siblings of the same sex, particularly between them. There was a time when there was a little boy, not so little, but there was a boy in their lives um, while they were in high school, and being Wale showed more attention to this boy because he had more institutional power, and Wale got a bit jealous, right? And they had a bit of um, of a fight. It wasn't something I wrote. I don't know for sure that that's Adam. I did justice to that.
Hmm. I thought it was because he just liked him. It was like that was his boyfriend.
No, but he wasn't his boyfriend.
No?
They were all kids in a high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
And you see, there's this culture of school father, school son
Mm.
thing, and Wale got jealous that his twin brother paid more attention to this little boy,
Yeah.
and he paid to him.
Yeah.
So it got a bit violent at some point,
Yeah.
right? Is it okay for there to be some sort of pseudo-sexual um, flair between siblings even?
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And even you talking about violence between twins, that reminded me of when Wale like talked down to Wole when they were older and was like, and said something to the effect of like, you're gay, I'm bisexual. And like, I felt like some sort of like hierarchy there, or this sort of like talking down to him in a way. Um, do you know what I'm referencing?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I liked that part, even though it was like so awful and ugly. I really like that part because I think that a lot of bisexual people, a lot of bisexual men sometimes do revert back to these ideas that like, oh, well, I'm closer to heterosexuality than you are. And like, that's a status thing. And I liked that it allowed Wale to be human and show that he's not this perfect, shiny, bisexual person. Like, you know, he's complicated and he's got some ugly parts of him too, you know?
Like what ugly parts?
well, that part, you know, the whole idea that to be bisexual means that you're better than a gay person because you can actually be attracted to women. You know, that's really ugly in my opinion. I think that even these labels, you know, they were obviously created to separate us and divide us, but also for control and power. And so to use that language and to talk about things in that way, I think it really kind of upholds that system of oppression, that some people will be favored and safe and some people will be killed and unsafe and vulnerable, you know?
True,
Yeah.
true. I was just reading a piece by a Nigerian scholar, Adeleke, and he speaks to the trend in Nigerian queer literature to portray um, queer characters of as having some sort of um, class, class and intellectual hierarchy, like being a bit more traveled, a bit more learned than the queer characters that we would ordinarily experience in real life, right? And perhaps onset the awareness of this label is also perhaps a marker of both their exposure, right? At a time when people didn't have the words for it. How do you know what's like bisexual? How do you know the nuances surrounding it? How do you know what was what, right? Differences. Um, and it goes back again to what I was saying earlier by my regretting not doing justice, you know, because it shouldn't matter, right? Um, how you love or what ratio you love in shouldn't matter in how you relate to others within the spectrum, right? If 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 for instance, I mean, in a world that works perfectly, both the bisexual man and the gay man would be stoned with the same amount of force in northern Nigeria, right? should it matter? Isn't it the same level of being? I mean, isn't it a common denominator that they love differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't it be okay? Look, we would have this special feature or this plug-in, right? sh- um, so we should be more. I think we should be more in tune. We should try to figure it out together, as opposed to trying to draw hierarchies or binaries. I get that it helps with discourse,
Yeah.
bisexual discourse, biphobia,
Mm-hmm.
and gay discourse, homophobia, and all of that. But in the grand scheme of things, it has never mattered whether or not you were authentically, as a queer man, you could authentically be attracted to women, because marriage wasn't seen as an expression of attraction. I mean, usually marriage is not an expression of attraction here. I mean, you like someone, it's a plus, right? But you must get married, right? You must get married, you must procreate, whether you like people or not. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
I totally do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. I think it worked in fiction, though. I think it works in fiction completely. And like that's what you're saying at the end of the day in the book. You're saying even if even if I'm bisexual and you're gay, they're still gonna violence is still gonna come onto us.
Yeah.
I think it worked. I think it worked.
I think I also think you should visit Nigeria more. I just come and spend a few months here.
Yeah.
Just, be here, blend in, and just keep quiet and keep your American accent in the back somewhere. Just keep quiet
Put it away.
and blend it out and see how things are. See how non-heterosexual men operate.
Yeah.
It's not. It's hardly ever in your face. It's
Mm,
hardly ever in your face. I mean, Facebook would give you a different experience of Nigerian queer men,
mhm.
but in the real world, it's still very much underground,
Yeah.
or perhaps it's not. But it just doesn't matter the way it matters where you are,
Mm,
right? People do what they do, and it's how they are, it's how things are. Do they want to wave it as a flag, or do they want to say, yeah,
mhm.
nah, just
There's,
let's do it in peace.
there's a section at the end of the book where you essentially say what you just said, that that you hope that for the liberation of LGBT people in Nigeria, when that day happens, when it continues to grow, you hope that Nigerian men, queer men, don't lose that sort of way of loving, which is like really intense because it is underground. And so you say something to the effect of like, oh, if there is a day where it is not underground anymore, you hope that Nigerian queer men don't lose that sort of like specialness. Do you remember what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yes, I felt it. I think I said it around comparing it with same-sex love in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been to Africa for a few years,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean it's a stark difference for me in how non-heterosexual men relate to each other, right? Um, across races, across classes, across what do you call it, generations and stuff. Here, right? Now, I'm not trying to essentialize Nigerian queerness, but there's, at least in my experience, there is such an intensity, right? And the fact that how this put correctly, but the fact that you know what I know, right? Automatically, and we know that we know, right? we become a sort of safe space for each other, right? Lines are crossed, and families are joined, and relationships are formed between families just because we know what we know. I'll give you an instance that because two boys are queer, right, and they form a special sort of bond, their families see this and align with that bond. So you see their mothers becoming friends, their fathers becoming friends, so they can hang out more, even if it's not sexual, right? And communities are formed based on the semblance of that intimacy, right? And the sexual bit is not so much the uniting factor. But in SA, it's at least in Pretoria, where I am based, there is a bit of distance. There's a bit of let's say superficialness, right? If um, if if we're both not heterosexual men, there has to be the line drawn, right? As if it depends on how we meet and where we meet. If you hook up, then you hook up. A hookup is a hookup is a hookup, and always makes a hookup. You don't become something else, right? If you're a work colleague, it remains that way, right? If the lines are blurred, there is some sort of public punishment, or people say, what's happening? This is very wrong, right? It's not common for people to, for instance, two queer men who work together in a formal space cannot meet outside formal space and become family, right? Besides, even if, let's say, sex isn't involved, like it's a platonic relationship, but it's intimate, it's very rare. And if it happens, they're like, no, something is happening there, right? Something to be squandered, something scandalous, right? Because intimacy, family, community, deep community, it's not something that they have retained successfully in SA. I mean, although they have it's a very progressive place to be in. The law allows, protects the sexual minorities. So in the sense of community is lacking. I mean, actual community is lacking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's a first of all, it's I think because it's a racialized society.
Yeah.
Also, there's a large space between the rich and the poor, right? Uh, Also, because people are people, right? And all these things kind of complicate each other and make things how they are. I mean, even if there are no, even if two men didn't have the the common denominator of sexual orientation, right? There would still be of two different races or two different ethnicities or two different socio-economic classes, and those things and those things will still drive them apart.
Yeah, that's really well.
So yeah, but people need to just learn to look past this these layers, and just love beyond class, love beyond race, love beyond gender expression
Mm-hmm.
and age. I am trying to play on this a bit. The At the beginning, there was this young man, this Ghanaian man, very thirsty, very thirsty Ghanaian man. Kwame, business from the plane to the house to
Yeah.
everywhere. And there was a bit of back and forth with Well as well, who, although like Kwame to an extent,
Yeah.
felt a bit of shame in relating with him sexually, but
Yeah.
still it showed some level of affection.
Mm-hmm.
There was the be protective and being inclusive and being territorial. Like,
Yeah.
look, we can shag, but you're my person, right? You're my person, and as far as you're here and I'm here, I'm responsible for you. I need to be sure at all times that you're okay. I mean, that's the kind of thing that should be. I mean, that should be prevalent in the community where people watch out for each other. Across these binaries, across these other social and political layers. That the fact that someone is off limits sexually doesn't mean he's beyond the limits of your brotherhood or of your respect
Mm-hmm.
or of your support.
Mm-hmm. In the book, you talk a lot about hope and the importance of hope. And yeah, I just want to know, why is it so important to you?
Um, Hope is important to me because that's the only justification for getting out of bed in the morning
Mm-hmm.
when things are so bleak, right? Especially when you wake up to a law, and to stigma, and to repression every day of your life. You need to hold on to something, and sometimes this thing doesn't exist. This thing isn't a partner who can lay in your bed, or a mentor who is always accessible. Is a dream in your head, right? That you build and you hold on to.
Um, what were some of the unique challenges to editing this book? I know that you were in school, you were in law school at the time, but were there other extraneous factors that made it difficult to edit this?
Um, yes, yes. Um, the first time, the timing of the book, I wrote it across and edited across like law school and my master's year. So I was weaving it through assignments and all the assignments and travels and moods and stuff. Um, Also, my publisher is English, right? And he's very very thorough, which is good. Um, but I think we had a lot of exchange back and forth. I needed to give him context to a lot of things that were Nigerian that he would ordinarily not have access to. Um, I also had I think around the time I had lost a friend, a very good friend. Uh, I'm not allowed to mention. Okay, well, his name is on the book actually. Um, on the dedication part, there was a character put in the book that wasn't there after he died. If you see it, you're not allowed to say it. I'm sorry.
Okay, I see it.
Okay. So he was someone that I was very close to. Um, like him, I mean, like the character in the book, the lines were blurred between both of us, and I had just come out to him following his death. So it was difficult for me to grieve and write and edit at the same time. You know, knowing, I mean, his knowing, not knowing what he would have said, right?
Mhm.
Not knowing if he would have accepted me or not. Also, the law had come out at that time, and it took um, it affected me mentally as well. I mean, every time there is news of Nigerians getting lynched. Time stops for me. Like, I can't sleep, I can't study, I can't do anything. And it doesn't help that my parents are my family is very Christian. So, and being at home, I experience this thing sometimes very raw. You know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. I think that, um, it could be a lot worse. Right? It could be a lot worse. At least I get to live through the experience. Some people die in the experience. Some people get caught, get stoned. Some people are arrested and left there to rot. Some people are blackmailed, extorted from. All I get to do is listen, and I think listen, watch sometimes from a distance. I think I'm blessed to be at that end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. So I wonder about the choice to only focus on queer men in this book instead of like queer women or non-binary folk.
There's something Issa Rae said in her tribute to Denzel Washington. She said she's a very thirsty woman, right? To an extent, it was, it was, it was also a very thirsty time for me. So, along the line, when I was like thinking about these guys and these characters, I thought it has to be someone that I'm attracted to, someone that I would ordinarily be interested in if I'm going to spend time writing.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
wondering what they're thinking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was most of the men in the book, the queer men in the book, were men that, modeled after some hetero seeming men that I know in real life.
Ah, okay. I see. Okay. So it was
found related.
it was a lot.
I don't think I was. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I was just gonna say it's a lot of catharsis, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And wasn't a deliberate exclusion of non-binary persons or women who love women. It wasn't. I just that just wasn't my interest at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and also it was mostly, although there are same-sex loving women who were affected and who are still affected by the anti-gay laws in Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
right? They are erased from the narrative that gets the public. They're erased from the news. They're erased from reports. They're not there. They're not talked about, which is very bad. There's not a rising culture of women writing about women and same-sex loving women who there's Blessed Body, an anthology by Unoma Zwa. I don't know if you read, edited by Unoma Zwa, and I Am Woman, I think. Yes, there's a number of anthologies that kind of capture the lived realities of same-sex loving women in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's a thing of positionality. Can I authentically write about the experiences of women as a queer man? Or shouldn't that be left blank for someone else to do?
Mm-hmm.
And if I did it, would I write honestly enough? Would I be able to capture the nuance? Although there is the positionality of the bystander, which I can have, the person who experienced experiences that are violent from the outside. Um, yeah, but generally, it was just I just wanted to see more men around, more men me. So, like I said, catharsis and a very, very whatever, like narcissism. I just like seeing more of myself around, right?
Yeah.
Like authors out there, we pump ourselves into narratives, and there's a whole book full of mirrors of the different sides to our sides to ourselves.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So Wale, it didn't seem like feminism was a priority to Wale, and I'm wondering if that was very reflective of Nigerian men in your experience.
Feminism as a concept, as a discourse, is not something that men generally. It's not commonplace for men to discuss, because it's often perceived as being as centering the woman, right? And you see that even Wale himself was more interested in boys, mentoring boys, talking to boys, talking about boys, speaking to boys, and the women in the novel as well. They were not very central. They weren't as visible as it would have been if it were. If someone else had written it, someone else with an eye feminism had written it. So I don't think it's a reflection of Nigerian men. It's only a reflection of the angle from which I wrote. Right? You're a bisexual man. I don't know what your experience is, but for a same-sex loving man, mostly same-sex loving man, I say I don't pay attention to women past a certain point. Right? I don't know if it's such a good thing, but I'm not as sensitive to the lived rights of women past a certain point. I am more concerned with how violence, how pain, how life and the factors of life affect men who are not as privileged, not as empowered as I am, right? And this goes to more intimate spaces than I would consider for women. I have sisters, right? Four, I have four sisters, and I do believe I do all I can to make sure that they're happy, they're safe, they are stable, at least within my within my means. But there are things that we just don't talk about, and and those things are beginning to shrink more and more, or rather expand. More and more, we speak less about the sensitive things, right? Does that make me less of a feminist? I don't know. I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you for being honest and like really explaining everything. Yeah. In the book there, and you touched on this earlier, you talked about academia and how a lot of times the perspective of queer Africans comes from like a very sort of like privileged place and things like that. But I wanted to talk about within this world that you created and within academia. What do you think drew these characters, Wale, all of these people? What do you think drew them to academia, drew them to this upper middle class sort of life or lifestyle?
Could you rephrase that, please?
Sure. So in the book, we see Wale as a professor at his old school, Kola University, and his colleagues. We get to know some of his colleagues, some of the good ones, some of the not so fun ones, whatever. So I guess I'm just wondering, what do you think drew these characters in your world of academia? What do you think drew them to academia?
If I get correctly, you're asking why academia is such an allure for activists.
For activists and for the character, just for the characters in your book, really.
Okay, for the characters in the book. I don't think it was deliberate that they were in academics. I think it was just by default that, I mean, I just come out Kola University was modeled after my university, right? I went to a private Catholic university in Nigeria that had most of the things that happened there to Wale and his brother happened to me personally. And I think most of my experience of injustices were within the university space before anything else, and there being in that space kind of, I think, for me was an opportunity to experience or play with the actors, right? If the university is a microcosm of the larger society, it means that there are all sorts within it. They are the oppressors, they are the idealists, they are the activists, they are the guys who are clueless even, right?
Yeah.
So it's just trying to capture the larger social nuance within the space of university politics.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. You answered all of my questions. You've done a great job, and yeah, I really appreciate this. I know that when we talk back and forth on Twitter, you kind of wanted to hear some of my perspectives a bit more. I don't know. Are there any questions that you have for me? Is there anything that you want to know? Because you've pretty much bared your soul to me at this point. So I think I should try to return a bit of that,
Okay. Which character stood out the most for you?
Wow, that's such a hard one. Okay, so obviously Wale, but forgive me. Her name begins with T. His fiance, T.
Yeah.
What's her name?
Titi.
Titi. Yes. So she really, really, really stood out to me and made an impression on me because here's this woman who I liked her a lot, and she felt familiar in certain ways. She felt like women who I have known here in America, and she also felt like Nigerian women who I've met. Even with the whole there was a point where she was testing him before they finally got married, and they slept together, and she would rub on him or allow them to go to a certain point, and then it was stop. And if he wasn't trying to touch on her, she was kind of why aren't you trying to touch on me? Back and forth, that funny dynamic of she's kind of testing his sexuality, but also testing him as sort of a man, isn't this what men should do or want? But also I'm a Christian woman. I would never, I will not allow you to do this. So that was really, really funny, but also, the underbelly of that is she's testing his manhood in a way. But then also the fact that she became very, very involved in the organization, and even to a certain extent, took on a lot of the work, especially in his absence. And so for her to be this ally and then use, the F slur to him when finding out that he had been with another man, even though she found out on their wedding day on her way to get married and through like a very illicit picture. And that's not a great way to find out that your fiance is bisexual or has been with men. But I really liked how this woman, who in a lot of ways would be seen as an activist, still, first of all, she wasn't okay with actually dating a bisexual man. And even before that moment, we had known that in previous conversations when they had as a group. And she said, God forbid, like, that's not my portion, things like that. But for me, it stands out so much because there is such a culture here in America of like, activism or social justice warrior or, all of that stuff. And people who say, oh, I don't have any problems with gay people. I don't have any problems with bisexual people. But then when you look closer at their relationships, if they were to be dating, if they were to find out that their partner was bisexual, or if they had a child and their child was seeming maybe like that this child is trans or gender nonconforming or whatever, you see a very different side of a lot of these people. So that character really, really, really stood out to me. Yeah, I really like that character a lot. Also, their dad, oh my gosh, like, yeah, that
I was
was,
going to ask about him just now.
pardon?
I was going to ask you about him just
Okay.
now.
Yeah, their dad. Oh my gosh. What a story. And what an arc. What an arc for him, really. Um, I thought that was really, really unique about this story and something that I really, really loved because there is such a lack of mentorship or guidance for queer men. Oftentimes we're the only ones in our family who are queer, and everybody else has this idea like of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a person, but by very like cisgender heterosexual lines and means. And so a lot of queer boys grow up and we don't have anybody to sort of like idolize or look up to. A lot of us aren't accepted by, heterosexual men or boys in our vicinity. So a lot of us are just left to kind of figure it out on our own. And not to say that these characters weren't, but in a time where they really needed some guidance or someone to step in, they had that. They had their father at the end, and that their community and their family to be like, no, 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 no. I know exactly what's going to happen next. We're out of here. Like, we're leaving. Like, you don't have a choice. So I thought that choice to make their father gay was really, really strong and really memorable. And I just think about the culture here around gay male spaces and bisexual men and things like that. And in large part, a lot of why we don't have these elders is because a lot of them were wiped out by HIV and AIDS. A lot of them are incarcerated or were killed by police or what have you. But some of the ones that we do have, some of them can be quite predatory in these gay or bisexual spaces, and it's really, really unfortunate. It's something that I really, really hate. It's something that when I was first learning to become really, really comfortable with my sexuality in the early 20s, I encountered kind of all the time. And it was really, really frustrating and disappointing to have these men who were well into their 50s or 60s or older, and you're coming into maybe a support group or some safe space or whatever as like a 21-year-old or like someone very young, and these people are trying to manipulate you into all sorts of situations, That really sucks. But it's not exclusive to gay and bisexual men. It would happen when I went into those spaces. There were bisexual women in those spaces who were much older, who were trying to do similar things too. I mean, it happens when I'm in straight spaces with, people of all ages. It's really like a vulnerability thing, which is what you talk about in the book. You talk about, homophobia it's not just homophobia, it's about vulnerability. It's about people who are vulnerable and trying to hurt or take advantage of vulnerable people.
I'm sorry about the the experience with the predatory people.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad that sometimes it gets to be very, sexualized culture.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that can happen between what I spoke about in the essay, I don't think that can happen between two men. It just has to be sex. If you're both on the margins and we share this weakness, then we should be shagging, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a logical thing.
Yeah.
Which is wrong, and which is very destructive, right? Because not every relationship should lead that way.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are just off limits because they're off limits
Mm-hmm.
regard sex, but that doesn't, like I said, that doesn't rule out the possibility of other types of affection,
Mm-hmm.
other types of connection.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if their age gave them the opportunity, their age and exposure also provided the opportunity for them to be other things to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they chose to throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
But now you know better.
Yep.
And you enough to be to be different,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
To strive for different, to be better
Mm-hmm.
to others who are with you and coming after you.
Mm-hmm. It's very true.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It's really sad.
Mm.
It's really sad.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. But
Okay.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to me. This was an amazing chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Your name is Yusuf.
Yeah.
Are you Muslim?
No, I'm not. My grandfather was Muslim on my dad's side.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your first name?
Olushola.
Olushola. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say so you're Malam after all. I'm going to ask you about the transgressive practices in northern Nigeria.
Like what? What transgressive practices?
And you wouldn't know.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I mean, non-heterosexual practices in northern Nigeria.
Tell me more. What? I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not something that you would know. But it's like I'm not quite sure whether it's an Hausa thing or it's a Muslim thing or it's both, right? Yeah. And what?
Tell me, just me.
Well, now you want to be gisted. Okay. Okay. Well, you're still recording. It's part of
I will take this off. Oh yeah.